You are listening to a Clarkesworld Magazine podcast with your host and narrator, Kate Baker. Welcome to the fourth story for the month of June 2026, issue 237. I hope this podcast finds you as well as can be. I want to thank you again for showing your support to the magazine just by being here listening, checking a few bucks our way, going to patreon.com/Clarkesworld or clarksworldcitizens.com. There are so many ways that you have shown your support, and I cannot thank you enough for giving me the opportunity to read these stories to you. Our story is titled 3 Cases from the Cosmic Psychiatric Clinic. It is by Pan Haitian, translated by Blake Stone Banks. Pan Haitian is a graduate of School of Architecture, Tsinghua University, National Class 1 registered architect, and a science fiction fantasy writer. He has won 5 Galaxy Awards of Chinese SF. His story, The Legend of Yanxi, was adapted into the ballet drama Yanxi by the National Ballet of China. He is also the co-founder of Shuizhou Novoland, a fantastic ancient Chinese setting crowd world-building project. He worked as editor-in-chief of Odyssey of China Fantasy from 2005 to 2010, and now teaches at China Academy of Art. There are a few other stories in Clarkesworld. I implore you to go back and listen should you so choose. Hanuman the Monkey King, City of Eternity, and The Hunger Tower. Now Blake Stonebanks is our translator for this piece. He speculates in his own fiction too. He was born in Kentucky and domesticated in Beijing. He thrives on bluegrass and revolutionary model operas. So, my dear listener, I hope that you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. The Tree Man's Rebirth. At the threshold to the Kuiper Belt in the outer solar system, Deep Space Gate was the largest station humanity ever built. The station psychologist, Chu Fei, believed this spectacle of space architecture had done humanity far more harm than good. Adrift among the icy celestial bodies of deep space, the station was an incubator for every madness and disorder not yet manifest in the human heart. If asked to prescribe a course of action, Chu Fei would recommend packing 2,000 tons of C4 into every nook and cranny in the station and blowing it to smithereens. Such demolition would have to wait until Chu Fei managed to get a seat on a return vessel, however. The esteemed psychologist had been stuck at his clinic for quite some time, longing for the voyage home. Station society at Deep Space Gate was far from harmonious, and Chu Fei harbored little compassion for his patients. His patients, in turn, felt the same way about him. His most recent patient had disturbed him so deeply that he started questioning his own existence, a neuroses he chalked up to stress-induced amnesia. Not that it mattered. Having suffered similar disorders during his station tenure, he was too aware that a self-diagnosis wouldn't score him a ticket home. The last berth on the current return ship had gone to a patient he had diagnosed with a malady he named delusions come true syndrome. Now he was forced to continue his practice on the mad station with no clue when the next return ship might dock. He was in the throes of a profound depression, but whose job was it to administer psychotherapy to the station's psychotherapist? Chu Fei's depression affected his work to such a degree that when his clinic door was pushed open, he rarely so much as lifted an eyelid. When the clinic door pushed open on this particular day, however, the commotion was too much to ignore. Chu Fei was forced to rouse himself. 4 workers clad in coveralls, hard hats, and safety harnesses were trying to bring a 5th through his office door. Their task was made infinitely more difficult by the man's mech suit, with its many branching arms locked at full extension. Chu Fei noticed then that the man's body was itself locked in a strange, stiff posture as though he were catatonic. The man was tall, and his locked arms spread out at a near 2-meter span. Soon, the group of workmen had gotten themselves uncomfortably wedged in the doorway. "What's this?" Chu Fei asked. He's refusing to move." "Yeah, Doc," said one of the workers. "He thinks he's a tree." Chu Fei inspected the patient from his sorrowful eyes to his rigid hands, covered in grime and welding scars. The workman informed him that the patient's name was Ashina Chuai Mo. It is good to be a tree," Ashina said. "I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't disturb me." Chu Fei was astonished. "And he still talks?" The workers all nodded. "Can I get you something to eat?" Chu Fei asked hesitantly. "I could use a bit of water," the tree man spoke politely. "Of course. What I really long for is a good rain with a touch of morning dew." The psychologist jotted something in his notebook, then turned to ask the other workers, "When exactly did these symptoms start?" The foreman shrugged. "Our job today was to dismantle and reinstall the traffic lights. We had to reposition every single one of them. A dignitary from the Commonwealth is here now, so they're switching all the roads to the left side traffic. We just dismantled a massive utility pole, and Ashina was in the process of moving it when he just froze. He was standing right in the middle of the intersection, shouldering that massive pole. The cars just kept piling up, so there was an immediate traffic jam. Since that moment, he's claimed to be a tree." Chu Fei could see this would be a challenging case. He intuited that a psychosis of such intense ontological distortion would require unconventional measures. Still, he felt compelled to begin with a traditional approach of surfacing logical inconsistencies that would challenge the patient's thought patterns. The other workers watched in deference at Chu Fei's side. One even removed his hard hat. "Trees are incapable of communicating with humans," Chu Fei began. "In fact, trees cannot speak." Ashina responded, "I am a tree with the capacity for empathy." "There is no such species of tree." "How could that be if I am such a tree?" concluded Ashina. Clearly, the traditional approach had failed. From the corner of his eye, Chu Fei caught the construction worker putting back on the hard hat, but he wasn't about to admit defeat. Chu Fei had a worker fetch a small hammer, which he then used to strike various points across Ashina's body. With each blow, he increased his force. Such blows, at most, would scar a tree's growth rings, but a tree had no means to resist a hammer strike. The moment Ashina could no longer withstand the pain, he would flinch, breaking the delusion that he was a tree. Ashina withstood all Chu Fei's blows without flinching. "All right, we'll have to find another method," said Chu Fei, panting as he put away the hammer. "Tell me, where are you now?" "In a forest." "Does that mean everything you see and hear is a natural part of this forest scene?" "Yes, except for you bustling, unfortunate humans. You shouldn't be here." "Oh, don't go feeling sorry for us just yet. You must complete our test first." On his computer, Chu Fei pulled up a selection of audio clips from various human activities. He would start with a noise familiar to the patient's work. The sound of a pneumatic hammer filled the room, a soul-shattering racket that intensified as the hammer pounded more rapidly. It was the grating kind of sound that would crack any sane person's composure, and it was devoid of any possible connection to nature. "What do you hear?" Chu Fei asked. "A bird," responded Ashina. "The lilting melody of a koel." Chu Fei then blasted a clip of car horns, which seemed only to torment his own ears. "It's a chestnut-winged cuckoo." Next, Chu Fei unleashed the thunderous roar of a rocket engine. The volume was so insufferable that the other workers had to press their hands against their ears. "A white bellbird." Ashina bent an indulgent smile. "The forest little troublemaker. Its call can reach volumes of up to 125 decibels. Chu Fei tried a burst of pure electronic noise. The sound of falling water. It is the cascades and rocky streams that make this mountain valley so wonderful. And can you hear this?" The room filled with the noise of a steam-powered ball mill pulverizing a slurry of ore. The splash of the carp trying to leap upstream and get over the cascade. Chu Fei conducted over 100 tests, interspersing previous sounds with new ones. Ashina never gave a single contradictory answer. Had he been spouting nonsense, his answers could not have been consistent across every test. His brain, Chu Fei concluded, must be unconsciously converting each sound into the perception of another. Chu Fei wiped the cold sweat from his brow. This was going to be an exceptionally challenging case indeed. Yet he couldn't help but envy Ashina's delusion. The cacophony of the station never ceased. It was like living in a massive construction site that never clocked out. No matter how Chu Fei wrapped his pillow around his ears, the hiss of the blowers, the cough of pneumatic guns, and the buzz of electromagnetic noise always crept in. The din reverberated in his ears night after night, making sleep agonizingly difficult. Chu Fei hoped he too might wake to birdsong. Wrapped in his delusion of natural tranquility, Ashina had escaped the noise of the station and found happiness. He was at this very moment immersed in his forest, listening to its birdsong and watching its fish dart through the cascades. During his time with Ashina, Chu Fei felt his own dejection lift. The very air seemed to shift as though catching a breeze from the verdant forest. His cough, too, softened and occurred less frequently. Chu Fei found himself recalling the dawn mists of Hangzhou, his hometown, billions of kilometers away. His responsibilities as a psychologist, however, prevented Chu Fei from allowing his patient to break with reality. No matter what comforts they might provide Ashina, the fantasies were antithetical to the grand order and purpose of the Deep Space Gate. There was no choice but to drag the patient from his blissful forest and return him to his professional and family obligations. Chu Fei could not allow the man to escape his 14-hour workdays, the frustrations of his 3 children, or his wife's complaints. He especially must not forget the binds of the Deep Space Gate mortgage she dredged up at the end of every argument. Chu Fei paced back and forth. Treating such an unconventional patient demanded unconventional measures. He glanced at the patient's co-workers watching from the doorway and beckoned them over. "I need a favor," Chu Fei asked, then leaned in and whispered precise instructions for what they must do. Ready to do anything to cure their co-worker, the workers blindfolded Ashina and wheeled him out. Then as quickly as they could, they gathered their tools and brought them into Chu Fei's clinic. When Ashina was brought back to the clinic, he opened his eyes and shuddered. Hung across the walls were circular saws, beam saws, panel saws, pull saws, keyhole saws, and coping saws. There were jack planes, molding planes, chamfer planes, rabbet planes, axes, adzes, squares, and inclines. Clearly, Ashina was in a spectacularly equipped woodshop. Wearing a leather apron with a pencil tucked behind his ear, Chu Fei looked the part of a seasoned woodworker. He raised his voice so the tree man would hear. "We'll cut here, right at the base. With timber this fine, we can't let a scrap go to waste." The workers grabbed their saws and began cutting into the soles of Ashina's boots, taking care to avoid his flesh. Ashina shouted at the top of his lungs, "You're barbarians! All of you!" "Shut up. You're nothing but a tree," Chu Fei rebuked. "We'll chop you up however we please. We don't need your permission." Ashina was speechless, but he stayed true to his role and endured it all. When they had cut through his boots, a worker gave Ashina a shove. Ashina crashed to the ground. The workers next rolled Ashina out on their oversized workbench. They held flames to his flesh and blasted him with steam. They kindly informed him, "We've got to dry you out and rid you of pests." Chu Fei expected Ashina to beg for mercy, but he stayed the course. Only when they shot insect repellent into his nose did he let out a few pained grunts. Aside from that, he maintained silence. "You're just a tree, and trees are not the masters of the earth. They're a resource for humans," Chu Fei said. "A tree can be transformed into many things for our use. We may make you into a chair, a table, and, of course, a nice stack of firewood. To be transformed for human use is a tree's destiny on this earth, so grin and bear it." "It matters little what you make from me," said Ashina, his voice brimming with sorrow. "I have no regrets. I am a tree." Fine. Now, let's get milling." Chu Fei injected Ashina with a neural sensitizer so that the slightest friction would feel as agonizing as an axe blow. An ant crawling over his skin would feel as though he were being trampled. When the sensitizer was absorbed, Chu Fei brushed the dull side of a sharp chisel across Ashina's face. The effect was as agonizing as if the chisel had peeled through his flesh. Wood shavings were blown across the bench and across Ashina's body as though he really were wood being carved. Chu Fei observed with satisfaction that, as predicted, he endured it all. "Now, I will carve the eyes for my puppet." Chu Fei swept the dull side of his chisel over Ashina's eyelids, then commanded, "Now, puppet, move your eyes." Ashina's eyes swung side to side. "And now I must carve your hands," Chu Fei said as he guided the chisel between each of Ashina's fingers. He again commanded, "Now, puppet, move your fingers." Ashina's hands began to flex, his fingers extended and retracted, though they were not yet nimble. "Next, I must carve the legs." Chu Fei dragged the chisel across every inch of Ashina's legs and feet. As Chu Fei did this, Ashina felt a desire to walk. "Puppet, I've carved your legs, now move. Ashina took 2 steps forward. Over the next few days of tapping his chisels and miming the pull of his saws, Chu Fei carved Ashina into the exact likeness of a human being. You are my puppet, Chu Fei commanded. I can make you dance. I can make you walk. You must obey my every command, for the strings that control you are in my hands. Ashina could only bitterly reply, I understand. When the work was complete, Chu Fei brought Ashina to his hab and began commanding his puppet to do this and that. Whenever the thought crossed his mind, he would put Ashina to work. Each day, Ashina mopped floors, cleaned windows, cooked lunch, washed dishes, hung laundry, fetched water, cooked dinner, and washed the dishes once more. Chu Fei granted Ashina just 4 hours a night to rest in the dim corner of his hab. This life as a puppet was even more agonizing than Ashina's labors among his work crew. Ashina railed against his fate but had no control over his own actions. Whenever he could, Ashina gazed out the window at the passing workers as they shouldered their tools and meal kits to their work sites. They seemed so strong and full of life. Several days passed. Then, when the moment was ripe, Chu Fei played his cards. I'd like to give you a name, he said. Ashina spoke meekly. Yes, my master. Pinocchio, Chu Fei said. Tell me, what is your wish? Ashina whispered in the darkness. To become human. Toy terrorism. The man knocking on the clinic door wore a tweed suit and old-fashioned bowler hat. He carried a leather briefcase. His shoes were worn as though they had walked a great distance. Hi there, I'm a salesman, the man said. And I'm not buying anything, said Chu Fei. Exactly, the man said. Well, that's exactly why I'm here. Chu Fei scratched his chin. This was the first time he himself had been the cause of a patient's disorder. The salesman, whose career had long been in decline, entered the clinic draped in an ashen aura and collapsed into the clinic couch. Everyone says they're not buying, just like you, now at the door. I can't sell a thing. Chu Fei immediately understood the challenge. Every resident on the station lived by the rules. Their lives were devoid of change and their needs were already met. Meals were delivered when they were hungry. Their dirty laundry was automatically dispatched to the cleaners. Cleaner bugs were always ready to tidy up their habs. Cerberus, the station's central AI, looked after everyone with meticulous care so they could devote maximum energy to their work. On the job, as well, every detail was prearranged. Work uniforms all had the identical cut, same color, same fabric. The only time workers needed to think about their clothing was when labeling their collars with their names. Even their tools came in standardized sets. Masons had their straight edges, trowels, and plumb bobs. Plumbers had their drills, pipe wrenches, and threading machines. Machinists had their files, drill bits, reamers, and bench vises. Workers marked their names on their tools just like their uniforms. With everything arranged just so, no one needed to buy anything. And even if they did, their halves were so small no one wanted to crowd their own with anything new. I'm afraid I can't help you there, said Chu Fei. Product and sales strategy is the job of a business consultant. As a psychologist... Mid-sentence, he trailed off, struck by the realization that this loss of desire to consume could trigger a kind of mass hysteria. At minimum, it already constituted a social abnormality that would have profound psychological repercussions. A pathology like this fit squarely within the scope of Chu Fei's clinic and demanded his attention. The station's residents also required time to set aside their work and engage in recreation, which was fundamental to a healthy mental state. Chu Fei realized the man on his couch, this peddler of odd trinkets, might prove key to treating this social disorder. Chu Fei therefore proposed to the salesman that they join forces to conduct a social experiment. The merchant immediately sprang to action, ordering large shipments of new products to be shipped from Earth. When the goods arrived, he deployed his team to hawk the wares in every corner of the station. They tried selling colorful balloons that scattered confetti like shimmering rain. They tried selling exquisite dragon-shaped lanterns that illuminated the dimmest points on the vaulted ceilings and in the evening flickered like embers with a captivating, festive glow. No matter the product, however, both retail shops and door-to-door efforts failed to attract buyers. Even at the height of the holiday, all anyone wanted to do after work was to lie on the couch and watch videos. No one had the energy to peer up at the dragon lanterns. The sales team floated outside their doors. When the salesman next visited the clinic, his head was nearly bald, stung by the failure of his plan and losing the confidence of his patient. Chu Fei knew he would have to delve deeper into the desires of the station's consumers. Perhaps the product needs a sense of mystery. We need to trigger an emotion of surprise, suggested Chu Fei. Well, what if we package the wares in mysterious gift boxes? When people receive the gift, it would spark their curiosity, the sense that someone cared about them. To sell, we need to rekindle that warmth of human connection and get people engaged in social interactions again. The salesperson saw the point and revised the next order from Earth. The next shipment arrived as an assortment of colorfully wrapped mystery boxes, decorated with ribbons and bows. Inside each box was either a plush pet that rolled over to have its belly stroked or a device that released a mist that would thicken into a temporary cloud-like sofa. Sales once again fell far short of expectations. Residents remained uninterested. They still lacked the time and inclination to appreciate the gifts. The gifts people truly wanted were higher wages, vacation time, more obedience from their children, fewer arguments with their spouses, relief from debt, and fewer work hours. Such were gifts no salesman could provide. Unable to see any solution, Chu Fei sank into despair. It seemed the salesman's melancholy had become contagious. The salesman was already researching how to file for bankruptcy protection. Then suddenly, one of the salesman's small toys caught on, and sales across the station skyrocketed. Cookie Bites were novelty toys that looked just like the cookies delivered with meal kits on station. The trick was that when someone brought the cookie near their mouth, this cookie took the first bite. It pinched the lips or the tongue without so much force as to break the skin, but with just enough sting to make someone really lose their temper. The first few times, the toy took its target completely by surprise, triggering enormous laughter from all who witnessed it. Though the salesman was surprised by the toy's success, these cookies were soon all the rage at Deep Space Gate. Crowds of buyers emerged from their habs and lined up outside previously empty shops to buy the cookies. They had grown so unaccustomed to the act of shopping that the experience felt fresh again. Then, glancing around, they would spot a familiar face in line and smile. Just as the Cookie Bites craze was winding down, a toy plane became the next top seller. It looked like a traditional toy glider. When released, however, jets of flames burst from its tail and singed the face of whoever had thrown it. Again, the station residents raced from their habs to line up at the nearest shop. Clearly, the two toys had suddenly exploded in popularity for a reason. Chu Fei invited the salesman back to the clinic to review the data. Grounding his analysis in group psychology, Chu Fei delivered an irrefutable analysis that made clear the therapeutic role the emotional release of the toy had in ameliorating consumers' collective despair. Chu Fei concluded his analysis by proposing 3 new principles for space station commerce. 1. When people feel there is no way to improve their position or the status quo, they enter a state of consumer despair. Unless 2. The stagnation is broken by the social interaction of a prank toy. A single toy, however, will never be sufficient to address the core pathology unless 3. The core pathology is countered by the coordination of a prank toy matrix that spreads at a rate of 1.3 times or higher. Each unit within the prank toy matrix will have a frustration threshold that directly correlates to a toy sales volume. Until Chu Fei began preparing the paper that would earn him a prestigious award at the annual conference of space psychologists, and the salesman began preparing the next order of prank toys. The order included Sausage Swarm, a convincing sausage that released tiny mice when the diner cut it, Tornado in a Bottle, a soda bottle that unleashed a miniature tornado, M-Shoes, which randomly locked to the floor to trip the wearer, and the Rainbow Fart Caterpillar, a candy worm that upon eating triggered a gaseous multicolored caterpillar to emerge from one's posterior and wriggle up to their head. Selected in accordance with Chu Fei's laws, each toy proved a resounding success, generating massive profits for the salesman. No longer a downcast failure, the salesman held his head high with a beaming smile. With his new car and gold watch, he appeared in every respect to be a successful businessman. He paid Chu Fei a substantial consultation fee and bade him farewell. Chu Fei expected never to see the salesman again, but the station was an unpredictable place. One day, when Chu Fei arrived at the clinic, a package was waiting for him. No sooner had he opened the box than dozens of plastic butterflies fluttered out. Their flashing wings danced and whirled about the clinic. Yet as they landed here and there, they transformed into flames, igniting a series of small fires throughout the clinic. It took Chu Fei considerable effort to extinguish all the fires. Rummaging through the box, he found the vendor's name, confirming his suspicion. Before he could figure out what to do about the situation, a station official knocked on the clinic door. The official flashed his badge, and Chu Fei's blood froze. It was the security chief himself, a figure of immense authority who commanded the whole security bureau and its police force. He could toss anyone in prison with a single word. The security chief shared a photograph of the suspect he was searching for, and as Chu Fei predicted, the photo was of the salesman. The prank toy trend had spiraled out of control across Deep Space Gate. What began as harmless pranks had grown into increasingly dangerous products, all to attract repeat customers. Moreover, where people previously had no choice but to grin and bear the station's endless overtime, canceled vacations, and unfair wages, they now expressed their resentments with these pranks. The hazards were escalating. They smuggled prank toys inside their toolboxes, tossing them onto factory floors or into supervisors' offices. There were pillows that triggered waking nightmares, candies that made team leaders blow bubbles when assigning tasks, microphones that distorted official speeches, and of course, swarms of butterflies that sparked fires. The Deep Space Gate was inundated with incidents and injuries that shattered any sense of its grand order and purpose. The aggressive incendiary features of these prank toys have activated the station population's most hostile and rebellious impulses, said the security chief. I hardly need to tell you how dangerous this is. Wiping the sweat from his brow, Chu Fei braced for his arrest and immediate incarceration. To his surprise, the security chief offered to drop all charges against him in exchange for his assistance in luring the fugitive salesman into a trap. Though a psychologist takes an oath to never betray a patient's trust, Chu Fei had long applied his own interpretation of the oath. It was the only way he had managed to survive so long on station. He had no desire to read any headline along the lines of, "Psychologist stays loyal to patient throughout lengthy prison sentence." With the security chief at his side, Chu Fei picked up his phone and dialed the salesman. Chu Fei pleaded but failed to persuade him to stop the sale of the dangerous toys. It's not for the money anymore, the salesman said. I'm working for my ideals now. When customs seized his imports, the salesman turned to smuggling. The pranks he ordered became more dangerous with each shipment. He even ordered a giant wind-up robot that crushed anything in its path and spewed flames from its mouth. It seemed that watching the station devolve into chaos had become his sole source of amusement. Destroy everything became his toy company's slogan, and he declared that only destruction could bring happiness to the station residents. Look, he would say, we will be happy now. Deep Space Gate made station-wide announcements warning of an emerging breed of space terrorist, one who espoused a doctrine of toy terrorism. The security chief mobilized the entire police force to hunt down the terrorist. Credit for their plan was, of course, due to Chu Fei. His psychological profile of the suspect pinpointed several locations where the man was most likely to be found hiding. Sure enough, police discovered evidence of the salesman at each of the locations and immediately sealed off every exit. The salesman, however, was no ordinary adversary. He unleashed his wind-up robots across the station, then deployed an automaton modeled on the security chief to confuse the police. Having sealed off every station thoroughfare, police were under strict orders to arrest anyone attempting to breach a checkpoint, even if that person was the security chief himself. Just when the salesman seemed to have no means of escape, he donned his spacesuit, slipped into an airlock, and fled into the void of space. The salesman had long since amassed a fortune and was now owner of the fastest private spaceship in the solar system. Once in his spaceship, no police force could ever catch him. Through the porthole, the salesman waved triumphantly at a squad of police fuming with rage. Then he pressed the button to fire up his jetpack and make for his ship. What he didn't know was that his jetpack had been swapped out for a prank toy. The jetpack spun the salesman back around and launched into a choreographed aerial performance, a spectacular space waltz. When the performance was over, the police donned their own spacesuits and brought the suspect in. Chu Fei now knew how to complete the last of his principles of space commerce. Until the toy maker is arrested. The security chief led a massive operation to confiscate all the salesmen's prank toys. Dozens of collection points were established, each guarded by armed officers, where the toys would be publicly gathered and destroyed. Deep Space Gate enacted a new law declaring that playing with any unauthorized toy constituted a criminal offense. Before long, the station's grand order and purpose was restored. Residents returned to their former way of life, monotonous, devoid of excitement, and safe. Only Chu Fei was left frustrated. Again, the last coveted seat on the ship returning to Earth was taken from him by one of his patients, this one, a notorious toy terrorist. Equally frustrating was that Chu Fei now had to retract his paper on the psychology of space commerce. Cleaning up. Some psychological case studies are so dangerous they must never be read. Instead, they must be hermetically sealed within titanium canisters, secured by lead seals etched in multiple languages. Extremely dangerous. Do not open. The canisters are then jettisoned into space through a port reserved for hazardous waste. They spin forever into the frozen depths of the universe. Under the watchful electronic eye of Security Audit Committee probes, these should never slip back into human hands. Yet some still wonder if this is always the case. In Chu Fei's private notebook, in fact, there exists a diagnostic report that, were it ever to be entered in official channels, would result in immediate arrest and revocation of his professional license. The secrets of that notebook will never be shared with any reader, other than yourself. This case began on the day Chu Fei found his clinic door swarmed by legions of tiny clamoring bots. The bots all had broad, flat bodies, each attached to 6 suction-tipped legs and protracted antennae. Save for the numerical identifiers inscribed on their top panels, C-102, DX-404, and so on. Each bot was identical. They swarmed over the clinic floor with astonishing speed, covering both the clinic office and entryway, even occupying spaces underneath tables and chairs. Soon they had swarmed over every inch of the walls and ceilings, too. There were hundreds upon hundreds of them. "Are you bots all sick in the head?" Chu Fei asked in frustration. He had been ready to pack up early for the day. His own psychological state was in poor shape, peeved that the Deep Space Gate had reduced chocolate rations from 400 to 360 grams per month. He wondered how much time it would take him and the other station residents to recover from the shock. It certainly wouldn't be today. The bots, Chu Fei realized, were cleaner bugs. Though he rarely thought of them, he had seen them on enough occasions to remember how their shape was designed to let them burrow into crevices and scour away grime. They usually steered clear of people, diligently cleaning where they would not be noticed. Their mission was to ensure the entire station was as pristine as possible. Now, every single cleaner bug was complaining to Chu Fei at once. He had a splitting headache from their nonsensical noise. It felt like being trapped in a beehive with his own thoughts drowned out by the incessant buzz. "Oh, quiet. Speak one at a time or select a representative to sum up your complaints," begged Chu Fei. When they did not stop, he yelled, "Can't you speak one at a time?" "No, they can't speak one at a time," said a rough human voice from the doorway. There, half obscured by cleaner bugs, stood a station official in gray uniform and oversized square-frame glasses. His eyes were tiny, and he spoke in a slow drawl. "They're a hive, a collective." Chu Fei approached the man to read his badge. "Chief Fu Achai, Sanitation Chief." The chief began explaining how the collective worked. "Imagine you've got a box of sand. Now you can dig holes in the sand, or you could pile it up to make sand castles. It's still just ordinary sand, but now imagine a sandman. When the sand accumulates, it acquires intelligence and life force. From the sandbox, the sandman climbs out and starts flexing its muscles. One grain of sand does nothing at all, but as a collective of sand, the sandman can do many things. Shovel snow, weed the garden, clean out a drain. When a grain of sand falls away, it gets replaced, but the Sandman does not appear to change. Everything is self-organizing, decentralized, with no one giving orders. It's like a colony of ants building a bridge of their own bodies to cross a stream. You can't ask an individual ant why it's biting the ass of the ant in front. The single ant won't have a clue. Chu Fei inquired about how this applied to the cleaner bug's role on the station. The cleaner bugs are guided by an algorithmic swarm intelligence that, until now, had almost no need for human input, Chifu Achai explained. The cleaner bugs spontaneously swarm to wherever they are needed, sorting and processing whatever refuse requires their attention. They then drag anything they must dispose of to the refuse pit at the station's core, where it gets incinerated. After they return to their designated zones or whichever location demands their services, it's all one big loop. Chifu Achai looked askance, then added, When a zone has a larger issue, like an overturned food cart or a drunk vomiting in the hall, more cleaner bugs will swarm to the scene. They're perfectly efficient with processing the right number of bots they need for a job. Never too many, never too few. So this kind of swarm algorithm, it must have some drawbacks, right? Well, and you're experiencing it. The swarm is self-organizing. There isn't a distinct entity that a human can properly communicate with. Chu Fei rubbed his forehead. How do you direct the cleaner bugs if you can't communicate with them? Chifu Achai shrugged, surprised by the question. Why, I stand on the sidelines, that's what I do. My job is to stay out of their way. Sometimes I'll pick my nose, other times I might rub my eyes. If someone's watching, I'll act busy, but I shouldn't involve myself in their work at all. Anytime a human meddles in the process, their efficiency plummets. My job is to maintain their peak performance, so it's best I do nothing whatsoever. The idea of a job that required one never do a single thing filled Chu Fei with envy. The contrast to his own maddening workload deeply bothered him, especially now that he was surrounded by hundreds of the cleaner bugs. Chu Fei asked without irony, And what exactly made you start caring about their mental health? Again, Chifu Achai shrugged, looking innocent. They decided on their own to come. Chu Fei again rubbed his forehead. This was a particularly tricky situation. If group decision-making were infallible, the fact that they were at his clinic meant their situation was grave. Chu Fei would have no choice but to separate them and ask them one by one. As Chu Fei expected, almost all the bugs he asked told them they had no idea why they had come to his clinic. A few, however, provided vague clues. CX-422. I cannot tell you what happened. I only know that I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of dread. DY-21, spinning in circles. I was too scared to work. Noting the pattern, Chu Fei asked the bugs why they were afraid. C9-123. No clue. Please help figure this out. Chu Fei asked them if their feelings of fear were a one-off or had occurred before. YR-237. Yes, it's happened before. What I described was the 15th occurrence. Chu Fei asked for the dates of each occurrence. When the list was complete, he stared at the row of dates in his notebook and sighed. Nothing stood out or felt amiss. Take a closer look at these dates, he asked. What do you remember from each day? Bug remembered nothing. When Chu Fei glanced at his watch, it was long past closing time. He had questioned fewer than 1/10 of the cleaner bugs in the clinic. It seemed it had all been a giant waste of time. All right, everyone, he announced. I need to work out a different approach to diagnose what's going on. What that approach is, I haven't figured out yet, so can you head back to work for now? Not understanding, the bugs continued to crowd the clinic. Chu Fei angrily shooed the cleaner bugs out, but it was useless. It was like playing music for a cow. No sooner had he persuaded FF-23 to leave than KE-213 had filled the vacancy. I command you all to turn around and leave, Chu Fei shouted. He kicked and swatted at them with his clipboard, but it didn't help. He even flung a few cleaner bugs out the window. As each left, its spot was immediately filled by another. Chifu Achai seemed to have anticipated this outcome. He simply stood by and watched with his lips pursed in a cautious but sympathetic expression. In the end, it remained unclear what, if any, specific action had triggered the cleaner bug's anxiety. Then, as if having received a collective command, every single bug turned simultaneously and scurried away in one perfectly choreographed movement. Chu Fei watched the shimmering backs of their ranks ripple across the floor like sand through a funnel. He wiped his brow and caught his reflection in the sparkling floor. The room was now immaculate. He supposed the cleaner bugs had given the clinic a thorough tidying up on his behalf. For several days, neither Chifu Achai nor the swarm of cleaner bugs returned. Yet Chu Fei remained restless, feeling deeply uneasy about what might be at the root of their fears. Chu Fei had the deepest training in the human mind, but was uncertain what, if any, principles of human psychology would apply to the cleaner bot collective. Eventually, he gave Chifu Achai a call and asked, "Is there any way we can dissect one of the cleaner bugs to understand it a bit better?" Chifu Achai replied, "Absolutely. I've read the manuals. It shouldn't be hard. You'll need a scalpel, a chain hook, and a brain scoop. Once you hang the bug up with a chain hook, you'll make an incision down its back panel, peel off the outer membrane, and turn it inside out. Then its hydraulic system will drain out. It will look a bit like blood, but don't let that bother you. Its convulsions shouldn't last for more than 7 or 8 minutes. After that, it's yours to dissect however you choose." "Fantastic. Come over and show me how it's done." "Look, it should be easy enough to do, but that doesn't mean it's something I want to do myself. This kind of thing is better for you to do, all right?" Having heard Chifu Achai's description, Chu Fei was already feeling nauseous. He hesitated, then in a cheerful tone said, "I guess dissection isn't necessary, but there's surely another way we can learn more about their patterns and what they've experienced." "All right," said Chifu Achai. "Why don't you come down here? You can find me near the entrance to the refuse pit." The refuse pit, where the cleaner bugs brought their collected waste, was located at the heart of the station. After meeting up with Chifu Achai, Chu Fei followed him around the perimeter of the massive furnace. Its fire gave the impression of a prodigious, unblinking eye. A vast basin encircled the furnace with walls like cliffs holding back a mountain of station waste. Chu Fei observed a swarm of cleaner bugs with bellies full of refuse and larger trash, hoisted on their backs, scurrying to and fro. This was where the bugs dumped their collective waste for incineration, both keeping the station clean and providing some additional fuel to the Deep Space Gate's planetary engines. Grasping the basin railing, Chu Fei craned his head over to get a look at the pit. Inside was a morass of picture frames, kids' toys, old clothes, and discarded books. As 2 massive gears concealed within the pool churned, the trash rose all the way up to the rim, then cascaded down. The gears ground the refuse until it was swallowed up by the crimson maw now gaping at the heart of the pit. As each wave of refuse descended, flames and smoke erupted hundreds of feet into the air. The gears loaded, and Chu Fei again stared as iron-hooped barrels, cloth dolls, old tricycles, table legs, lacquer boxes, purses, and broken-toothed combs tumbled through like a rushing stream. These once cherished possessions were all just another second of fuel to extend the furnace's pale wisps of smoke. "There's so much stuff here," Chu Fei remarked. "I guess I now have a better idea of what it feels like to eat the trash discarded from so many lives." "Does that mean you're making progress?" asked Chifu Achai. "It means I have a theory that within a collective of intelligent agents, a minority may be especially sensitive to change in the world. When a few cleaner bugs become disturbed by what they find in their environment, their individual reactions will propagate to other members of the collective. The group will respond, whether they're aware of what triggered the change or not. Specifically, there may be a particular type of waste that triggers a response among certain cleaner bugs and then propagates as a collective fear response." Chifu Achai nodded. Chu Fei asked, "Do you keep records of the refuse they collect?" At first, Chifu Achai wanted to avoid the hassle and deny the existence of any such records. With a little prodding, however, he was forced to admit that such records indeed existed, but it took a considerable amount of time working at his terminal to retrieve them. The indignity of having to do actual work during office hours left Chifu Achai seething. Chu Fei returned to his clinic with a vast trove of data documenting all collected waste for the dates in question. For days and nights, Chu Fei analyzed the data, searching for anything out of the ordinary. He noted all suspicious data points. First was a doll riddled with stab wounds, then a bird with a broken neck. There was the corpse of a cat and parts of another pet who had been dismembered, with its limbs placed in adjacent trash cans. Most importantly, dates for the most disturbing items corresponded precisely to dates that had triggered the cleaner bug's collective fear response. For professional reasons, Chu Fei was eager to apprehend the individual abusing animals and subject him to psychological analysis. He was 100% certain the guy was a threat and might even become a serial killer, and the cleaner bugs had known it all along. Might they have left a bug behind to learn more about who the person was and when they had become so unsettled? The mutilations had persisted for at least 6 months. So what then triggered the swarm's visit to his clinic? Chu Fei again studied the records for the day the cleaner bugs visited the clinic but found nothing more. The investigation seemed to have hit a dead end. When Chu Fei finally reached out again, Chifu Achai had all but forgotten who he was. Surprised, Chifu Achai said, "Oh, right. When the bugs didn't return to the clinic, I figured the matter was settled." "Nothing about this is settled," Chu Fei said. "Not as far as I'm concerned." Chu Fei's obsessive-compulsive disorder had him on edge, and the cleaner bug's case wouldn't stop tormenting him. He pressured Chifu Achai to share more data. Eventually, he got another 100-plus terabytes and was again sifting through the records. He soon struck on another clue. Around the time the cleaner bugs visited the clinic, a massive quantity of one individual's belongings was registered at the refuse pit. "What happened here?" Chu Fei muttered as he logged into Cerberus to run his query. He discovered that a dead body had been found on the day after the cleaner bugs swarmed his clinic. The man was a burly groundskeeper responsible for maintaining the foliage on the station's streets. His body had been found in the artificial canal behind Bar Street. The deceased had lived a solitary life with no known relatives or friends on station. Cerberus had registered the death as accidental. The deceased appeared to have lost his footing while cycling drunk and flipped over into the embankment. It was considered an indisputable fact that the station's central AI was infallible. Chu Fei, however, felt uneasy about that assessment now. Since the day the body was discovered, no new tortured dolls or animal carcasses had appeared in the refuse pit registry. Chu Fei went to find Chifu Achai. "You ever get to the root of the cleaner bug's anxiety?" asked Chifu Achai. "You're sure their collective is unable to communicate with humans?" "Well, that's the way it's always been." "When one doesn't consciously perceive their inner self, the inner self manifests as a form of fate," Chu Fei said. "I have my hypothesis. The cleaner bug collective was compelled to kill someone." "Huh?" Chifu Achai's jaw dropped. "If the cleaner bug's mission is to keep the station pure and clean, what happens when they encounter true filth?" I don't get it. If a bot kills someone, it can never be classified as murder. The person's death can only be interpreted as an accident. The very concept of murder does not exist within the bot's programming. A death at the bot's hands can only be an algorithmic error, which is why Cerberus flagged the incident in question as an accidental death, misleading the Security Bureau. Imagine this. A cleaner bug disables the brakes on someone's bike, which causes this someone's death. It would be easy enough for the individual bot, oblivious to the consequences of its action. The collective consciousness, however, would be painfully aware of those consequences. It might, in fact, trigger such a deep sense of guilt and need to process what it had done that the collective would seek out a psychologist. Chifu Achai was dumbfounded. "You're saying my colleagues are pretty messed up?" "I don't have proof, it's my hypothesis," Chu Fei said. "Like a human patient who has taken a human life, the collective came to me seeking a way to save itself." "And what are we supposed to do about it? The police won't take a case like this." Chu Fei frowned. "This case isn't over yet." One morning, a short time after his discussion with Chifu Achai, Chu Fei opened the clinic door to find it again brimming with cleaner bugs. They were huddled together in clusters, thousands of eyes gleaming with fear. Now it's over, Chu Fei thought. He logged on to Cerberus and began scouring the news. It didn't take long to find another death, again classified as an accident. A film projectionist was found dead in the park with a shotgun and several glass bottles nearby. Prior to his death, the man was known to frequently shoot beer bottles into the park's man-made lake, the bottom of which was littered with glass shards. The police concluded that improperly loaded ammunition had caused his gun to explode. Looking into the projectionist's criminal record, Chu Fei found repulsive reports of street brawls, assaults, and domestic abuse. The projectionist had on multiple occasions beaten his wife within an inch of her life. There was a report that he had laid hands on his daughter as well. Chu Fei again brought the evidence to Chifu Achai. It was the collective? Chief Achai asked. Of course it was. Chu Fei was confident. Maybe it's the best we do nothing, Chief Achai shrugged. For years, his do-nothing philosophy had worked just fine in his management of the Cleaner Bug Collective. No, Chu Fei shook his head. Once something like this starts, it only gathers steam. We can't go to the police, Chief Achai snapped back. Who could they arrest? The bot that sabotaged this guy's ammunition? You said to yourself that an individual bot could never make the decision to kill, so apprehending the bot would be pointless. The alternative would be to arrest the entire Cleaner Bug Collective, and then what? Put them on trial and imprison all of them? The station doesn't have a prison big enough for all the cleaner bots, and once separated as individual units, they're entirely innocent. We're going to have to look closely at our options, said Chu Fei. He had no intention of handing the cleaner bugs over to the police, given how desperate they had come seeking his help. He would never so casually betray his patients. The collective worked slowly through the station. It possessed no singular physical form, yet was a colossal entity that permeated all Deep Space Gate. Across its distributed nodes, the collective engaged in myriad interactions, coordinating much the way quorum sensing orchestrates bacteria. This thought made Chu Fei reconsider the collective scale. For a quorum sensing intelligence, perhaps its size wasn't so great after all. The luminescent Vibrio harvei bacteria coordinated its collective across the whole of Earth's oceans. The honey fungus formed an interconnected network spanning 9.65 square kilometers of Oregon. The tetraploid Posidonia australis colony of Shark Bay blanketed 200 square kilometers of shallow seabed, the size of a small country. Though the Cleaner Bug Collective might not compete with the biological giants of Earth's natural world, within the confined space of Deep Space Gate, it was omnipresent and all-seeing. It was, therefore, omniscient. Its 1,000 eyes, like burning torches, had a bird's eye view on everything unfolding within the station, while the collective played an active role in the station itself. Though the collective might not understand the meaning of human interactions on the station, it perceived the hidden emotions that lurked within. And to the collective, human pleasure likely signified nothing more than waste to collect. Humans manufactured vast quantities of products, all of which would be discarded someday, much still in their original packaging. Dining meant uneaten food tossed in trash cans or dropped on floors, nights out drinking left behind empty bottles and smashed street lamps. Moonlit strolls that sparked desire became nothing more than discarded condoms filled with millions of biological cells. Every discarded box, every shovel full of ash, every wine bottle dropped on the ground, every clump of cat hair, every falling leaf, all compounded the collective's anxieties, compelling it to ceaselessly dispatch its cleaner bugs to the front lines of battle. As soon as one site was clean, the next mess was waiting. The collective's life was a Sisyphean battle, a 24-hour struggle without rest. Unexpressed emotions don't die, they're buried alive. So how could the collective save itself? A cleaner bug scout transmitted a signal identifying a new site of suffering, a filthy piece of biological trash on the move. He would soon generate more intolerable filth. The collective must take action. It had to clean. The interval between discovered bodies was quickening. The collective was executing its work more efficiently and covertly. In the supermarket parking lot, a rusted billboard had toppled, bludgeoning a computer analyst to death. Looks like we have a collective of serial killers, Chifu Achai lamented. Chu Fei's background check on the deceased revealed the man had possessed a substantial collection of child pornography and was a suspected pedophile. The Security Bureau believed that on the day of the incident, he had been stalking a teenage girl in the neighborhood near the market. Among the refuse retrieved by the cleaner bugs, Chu Fei discovered surveillance logs and plans penned by the dead man's hand. It was these discarded notes that had unsettled the collective, triggering its strike. 3 strikes, you're out, said Chu Fei. You know, these people it's taken out are the absolute dregs of society, said Chief Achai. Why don't we just let the bugs do their work? Well, up until now, you're right. The collective has been ridding Deep Space Gate of its most deplorable, agreed Chu Fei. Yet we can't guarantee that's always going to be the case. What happens if they take offense at someone who often litters? Should they be able to take out a jaywalker? The collective isn't Batman. We can't permit this to continue. All right, you want to arrest all the bugs? Just try it. Chief Chai shouted in a shrill voice. Can you imagine the predicament Deep Space Gate will be in when it shuts down its sanitation system? Garbage flood in the streets. If we shut them down for just a couple of days, the waste would be enough to circle the station twice over. And who's going to clean that up? Not me. I'm one man. And I'd be the only one left in the whole sanitation department. So no, absolutely not. I'm not about to let you have them arrested. Chu Fei couldn't argue with that. He didn't want the station flooded by refuse either. He scratched his head. So, I have one more idea. The plan was to rotate cleaner bug populations through the station's filthiest nightclubs, underground fight clubs, and red light districts. They would acclimate the entire collective to every vulgarity of human culture. Self-degeneration was a far easier task than self-cultivation, so it should just be a matter of time before every cleaner bug was enculturated to the station's residents' every vice and weakness. Moreover, Chu Fei suggested as the reactions of individual bots propagate, they will accelerate the collective's degeneration. Having outlined his plan, Chu Fei took in the surrounding station with a wistful eye, its towers of crystal clear glass, unblemished roadways, and pristine lawns. The station would never be this clean again. Chu Fei's plan proved effective. Neither he nor Chifu Chai heard again about any strange accidental death, and Chu Fei never again found cleaner bugs swarming his door. A month later, Chu Fei walked out of his clinic and admired the street. He saw toppled trash cans, torn garbage bags blowing in the foliage, and a bizarre foam bubbling in one of the gutters. He skipped over the dog poop scattered along the sidewalks toward the cleaner bug crawling at a sluggish pace. The bug gave the dog-stained sidewalk a half-hearted wipe before ambling nonchalantly away. Such a perfunctory attitude toward work was something Chifu Chai would no doubt admire. At the crossing, Chu Fei reached to press the signal, but his finger hit something sticky, a wet wad of chewing gum, and he wasn't the slightest bit angry. After all, it was his treatment method that had caused this mess. He tore a sheet from his clinic notebook and wiped his hand. Deep Space Gate was a little dirtier and a little safer. Such was the price, no worse than diminished chocolate rations. And as for why chocolate rations were cut, he still didn't know. Like the other station residents, Chu Fei silently accepted that reality. Each of them was just one among their own collective. So too was all life. This story was originally published in Chinese and non-exist SF, February 1st, 2020. It has been translated and published in partnership with Storycom. And what are your thoughts on the story? You can send an email. I'm kate@clarksworldmagazine.com. We have a few more stories left for you for the month of June, and then onward we go to July. I do hope you'll come and join us then. And until then, my dear listener, I bid you a very fond and hopefully very temporary farewell.